Something is happening right now in professional tennis that nobody planned for, nobody predicted, and frankly, nobody knows how to stop. Picture a routine practice session on the WTA Tour. Normally, it is one of the quietest corners of professional sport. Just the hollow pop of a tennis ball off the strings, sneakers chirping on the baseline, maybe a few dozen dedicated fans watching from a respectful distance. It is calm. It is controlled. It is the same scene that has played out for decades, from first-round qualifiers all the way to the biggest names in the game. That is what practice is supposed to look like. What is happening in 2026 looks nothing like that. Right now, the Women's Tennis Association is dealing with a full-blown operational crisis, one that has tournament directors scrambling, security, teams overwhelmed, and the sport's entire scheduling infrastructure straining under a kind of pressure it was never designed to handle. We are talking about stadiums being overrun, crowd control emergencies, a player who now requires up to 12 security guards just to walk from the locker room to a practice court without being completely engulfed. If I asked you to guess which player is at the center of this storm, your mind would jump straight to the heavyweights. The world number one Iga Swiatek. Maybe the ferocious Aryna Sabalenka. Perhaps American star Coco Gauff, fresh off another big title run. You might even wonder if a retired icon like Serena Williams or Maria Sharapova somehow materialized at the facility. Every single one of those guesses would be wrong. The player commanding a head of state security detail, the player whose mere presence on an outer practice court is triggering stampedes, hour-long queues, and complete logistical breakdowns, is a 20-year-old from the Philippines. Her name is Eala. Read that again. A player currently ranked just inside the top 50 in the world is generating a level of fan hysteria that the sport has almost never witnessed at this stage of anyone's career. The WTA is in genuine panic mode because the entire infrastructure of a tennis tournament is built around one thing: ranking numbers. Historically, you place your top 5 players on the massive show courts, the self-contained stadiums with underground tunnels, secured corridors, and 20,000 seats to absorb the noise. Everyone else, the players ranked 30 to 70, goes on the smaller outer courts. Intimate, accessible, charming, maybe 800 people, a couple of polite security staff, and an easy stroll back to the locker room. For 99% of the tour, that system runs like clockwork. Then Eala walks onto court 6 and the whole thing collapses. What we are witnessing is a cultural phenomenon that reaches far beyond tennis itself. It is the raw, thundering power of the global Filipino diaspora. Millions of people scattered across Melbourne, Miami, Madrid, and everywhere in between, converging on tennis stadiums and turning them into something that sounds less like a grand slam and more like a sold-out national championship. They come with flags. They come with face paint. They arrive with coordinated chants that drown out the umpire's microphone and leave opponents visibly rattled before the first ball is even struck. In today's deep dive, we are going to pull this story apart completely. We will revisit the chaotic scenes that unfolded at the Australian Open earlier this year, where thousands of fans were locked out of a court that should never have been assigned to her in the first place, and where the scenes that followed left the tennis world genuinely speechless. We will examine what it actually feels like to be one of her opponents, stepping onto a court where the crowd does not just support the other player, but actively celebrates your mistakes, cheers your double faults, and turns every routine rally into a white-knuckle pressure test. We will talk about what all of this means for Alex herself, a 20-year-old trying to focus on a tennis ball while simultaneously carrying the athletic dreams of over 100 million people on her shoulders. And we will make the case for why the WTA can no longer afford to treat this like a novelty. The sport needs to adapt, the scheduling rules need to change, and the way the WTA handles superstar energy in mid-ranked players needs a complete rethink. Stay with me, because this story is unlike anything professional tennis has seen before. To really grasp the scale of the problem, you need to understand how a major tennis tournament actually operates from the inside. A Grand Slam or a Masters 1000 event is essentially a temporary city. Tens of thousands of ticket holders flow across the grounds every single day, drifting from court to court based on who is playing and when. Tournament directors manage this human traffic using a formula that has been refined over many decades. The superstars, your top 10 players, go on the big show courts. These are self-contained fortresses, secure tunnels beneath the stadium, heavy perimeter security, seating for 15 to 20,000 people who are seated, contained, and manageable. Everybody else is distributed across the outer courts. Beautiful courts, but modest ones. A few hundred seats, narrow walkways, and players who often need to push through the general public just to get from the warm-up area back to the changing rooms. That model works beautifully, right up until the moment a ranking spreadsheet tells a tournament director to put Eala on one of those outer courts. Because Eala is not just the world number 45. She is the undisputed standard bearer for Filipino tennis. The moment her match is announced, the Filipino community, in whatever city she is playing, does not trickle in. They mobilize. They organize through social media within hours. They coordinate transport. They descend on the venue en masse long before the gates open. A court built for 800 people suddenly has 4,000 people surrounding it. The walkways turn into impassable bottlenecks. Queues stretch across the grounds for what feels like miles. Fans who cannot get in start climbing planters, pressing against perimeter fences, and blocking the foot traffic to every other match on the property. The security systems at a tennis tournament are designed to protect players from isolated incidents, a rogue fan, an unexpected confrontation. They are absolutely not designed to manage a rock concert crowd pouring around a small outdoor court. When Eala finishes a session and tries to walk back inside, the surge of fans desperate for a photo, an autograph, or simply a closer look at their national hero is so overwhelming that tournament staff have had to form a physical human shield around her. A tight, interlocking ring of up to 12 security guards, moving her through the grounds the way a motorcade moves through a crowded street. The WTA did not see this coming, not even close. The moment that forced everyone to pay attention happened. At the Australian Open in Melbourne. Melbourne is home to one of the most tightly knit and passionately engaged Filipino communities on the planet. When it became known that Eala had qualified for the main draw, a historic milestone, widely believed to be the first time a Filipino woman had ever reached that stage, the anticipation in the community did not simmer. It boiled over. Tournament. Organizers, following standard procedure, scheduled her opening match against Alicia Parks on Court 6. Within hours of the draw being released, tennis journalists and commentators were already calling it a mistake. Some were less diplomatic than that. The queues forming outside Court 6 grew into the thousands well before the match began. Inside the court, which filled to absolute capacity almost instantly, the atmosphere was unlike anything that venue had experienced. Tennis is a sport that demands silence during points. The umpire's instruction, "Quiet please, players are ready," is as much a part of the ritual as the coin toss. But that instruction meant nothing to this crowd. Every point Eala won ignited a celebration that shook the walls. Philippine flags draped over every available surface. The chant of, "Let's go, Alex," pulsed through the concrete stands in waves that even the umpire's microphone could not talk over. Routine baseline exchanges were met with roaring applause. The official pleaded for calm repeatedly. The crowd could not be contained. Eala came out on fire, feeding off the energy and dismantling Parks in the first set 6 games to none. But tennis is a sport of long hauls, and Parks steadied herself, found her feet, and ultimately came through to take the match. When the final point was struck, the court fell briefly silent, and then the real chaos began. The scenes of Eala being rushed off the court, completely encircled by security personnel, were captured on camera and circulated widely. It looked less like a tennis player leaving a match and more like a dignitary being extracted from a public event. Reflecting on it afterward, Eala was candid. She called the reception heartwarming. She admitted the loss stung even more because she could feel how desperately the crowd wanted to celebrate with her. But she also acknowledged something. She had not fully prepared for the sheer, overwhelming volume of it all, even at practice. She is learning to handle it. The structures around her need to catch up faster. This goes well beyond a logistical inconvenience for the WTA. It is actively reshaping the competitive reality of every match Eala plays. Standing on the other side of the net from her in 2026 is no longer just a tactical puzzle. It is a psychological ordeal. Her game plan, her heavy topspin forehand, her court coverage, her movement, these are all legitimate concerns for any opponent. But before they have even hit a single ball, they are walking into a hostile environment unlike anything tennis typically produces. Consider her grueling encounter at the Miami Open against experienced German professional Laura Siegemund. Miami has a large and vibrant Latin and Asian demographic that resonated deeply with Eala's story, and the crowd was overwhelmingly vocally in her corner from the first game. What followed was a 3-hour and 20-minute battle that pushed both players to their absolute limit. For Siegemund, a seasoned professional who has seen every kind of crowd in her long career, the environment was extraordinarily difficult. Her errors were cheered. Eala's winners were greeted like match-winning moments. The tension was relentless. At a critical moment in the second set, it boiled over entirely. After Eala misjudged a ball toss, a completely normal occurrence, Siegemund, clearly worn down by the constant noise and the unrelenting pressure, walked away from the baseline and lodged a complaint with the umpire about the pacing of the match. Eala pushed back. Words were exchanged. The match had turned hostile, and the crowd had played a central role in getting it there. This is the hidden dimension of what is now being called the Eala effect. Her opponents are not simply playing a rising 20-year-old. They are playing the crowd. In a sport where the difference between winning and losing often comes down entirely to mental clarity, having thousands of spectators cheering your double faults and screaming during your service motion is psychologically destabilizing in a way that is very hard to train for. The most battle-hardened veterans can find a way to block it out. For younger or lower-ranked players, the prospect of walking onto a court against Eala is genuinely intimidating before the match has even started. And the umpires? They are powerless. You cannot eject 3,000 people from a stadium. You simply have to let the storm rage and hope that both players can find a way to navigate it. To understand why the WTA was so completely unprepared. For all of this, you need to understand something about the sporting identity of the Philippines. For over a century, the country has been defined by basketball. The courts are everywhere, from the dense urban centers of Manila to the most remote provincial villages. Beyond basketball, the Philippines has a deep and passionate tradition of rallying behind combat sports heroes. Manny Pacquiao did not just win boxing matches. He brought an entire nation to a literal standstill. Every time he entered a ring, life in the Philippines paused. Tennis, by contrast, has historically been viewed as a niche pursuit, a country club sport, something played by the privileged few, never quite embedded in the national sporting consciousness. More crucially, the Philippines had never produced a player capable of competing seriously at the highest level of global singles tennis. There was never a Filipino player looking across the net at Roland Garros and genuinely believing the trophy could be theirs. Eala changed that equation entirely. She is not just talented, she is a genuine prodigy. Junior Grand Slam titles, a move to Mallorca to train at the Rafael Nadal Academy, where she absorbed the relentless clay court tactics, the physical endurance, and the competitive ferocity that defined Nadal's own career. A career-high ranking inside the top 50, the highest any Filipino singles player has ever climbed. For the millions of overseas Filipino workers, immigrants, and expatriates spread across the Middle East, Europe, North America, and Australia, Eala is something they have never had before, a unifying symbol of national sporting pride at the absolute top level of a global sport. When they watch her competing on the grass of Wimbledon or the red clay of Roland Garros, they are not watching a tennis match. They are watching their flag elevated in a space where it has historically been invisible. This is why they do not simply applaud politely. They bring the energy of a college basketball final to a tennis court. They pour decades of accumulated national sporting hunger into a single 20-year-old athlete. The WTA, which is accustomed to passionate nationalistic support in places like France and the United States, has never encountered this specific combination of concentrated intensity, mass social media coordination, and unshakable vocal loyalty. It is an entirely different beast. Crowds this size do not show up for a player who cannot genuinely compete. They show up because Alex Eala is a real and credible threat to the established order of the WTA. The game she has developed at the Nadal Academy in Mallorca is not a marketing story. It is the core of her tennis identity. The academy builds players with exceptional physical endurance, heavy aggressive topspin, and a refusal to accept defeat that borders on the irrational in the best possible way. Recent practice footage from sessions that are, themselves, attracting enormous crowds shows Eala working through intense high ball count rallies, attacking relentlessly off the forehand while rapidly repositioning her feet to cover the backhand. That preparation is pointed directly at the European clay court season. The transition from the hard courts of the Florida Sunshine Double to the physically punishing red clay of Madrid, Rome, and Paris. This is where her academy foundation is expected to shine brightest. Clay requires patience. It requires the ability to construct a point tactically over many shots and to slide and defend when the opponent takes control. By entering the WTA 500 and 1000 events on clay, she is stepping directly into the path of former champions and elite professionals like Elena Rybakina and Ekaterina Alexandrova. The fans understand exactly what that means. They recognize that she is no longer a promising junior with potential. She is a legitimate professional entering what is physically and technically her prime window. Every forehand she strikes in practice is being analyzed and celebrated as one step closer to the dream that has never been closer: a Grand Slam singles title for the Philippines. With this level of attention comes a completely different order of pressure, the commercial weight of being a national icon. Alex Eala is no longer simply an athlete. She is a commercial force. Global brands understand exactly what the Filipino market represents: fierce, deeply loyal consumer engagement at enormous scale. A partnership with Eala is not a billboard. It is a direct line to millions of highly motivated supporters. This understanding has led to major deals with Nike, where she has incorporated personal cultural touches into her on-court apparel, including her now recognizable custom Sampaguita hair tie. She is backed by telecommunications giant Globe, financial institution BPI, and her racket manufacturer, Babolat. She is appearing on the covers of Vogue Philippines and Tatler, moving effortlessly from the sweat and grind of match day to the world of fashion and cultural ambassadorship. In interviews, she speaks with a maturity that feels well beyond her 20 years about the privilege of representing Filipino culture and values on the world stage. She talks about wanting her partnerships and visibility to inspire the next generation of young Filipino athletes to believe that the highest levels are accessible to them. But this off-court presence adds genuine complexity to her daily life. While she is working to sharpen her forehand and improve her movement, she is simultaneously managing photo shoots, sponsor commitments, and the relentless weight of public expectation. The cultural gravity she carries has now reached into politics. Philippine senators recently had to publicly call on Meta to intervene over AI-generated posts, falsely suggesting that politicians were soliciting her endorsement. Her name is being used as leverage in political conversations. That is a remarkable and revealing measure of exactly how significant her presence has become. Through all of it, her self-awareness is striking. On a recent podcast, she came across as grounded, funny, and relaxed, joking about being a committed matcha drinker rather than a coffee person, and laughing about how the most Filipino thing she does during a tournament is pray intensely when she gets nervous and apply sunscreen. With absolute dedication. She knows the attention is staggering. She admits that walking off a practice court in Australia and finding a wall of people waiting for her was something she genuinely did not expect. But she also points out that she has been managing scrutiny since she was grinding through low-level qualifiers. She is adapting. The world around her needs to move faster. As the 2026 season moves forward, the situation surrounding Eala presents professional tennis with one of the most fascinating and complex challenges it has ever faced. Everything we have covered today is not a phase. The fervor is not cooling. If anything, as she continues to climb the rankings, goes deeper into grand slams, and edges closer to a serious title run, the crowds are going to grow larger, louder, and more determined to be present for a moment that feels genuinely historic. The WTA is at a decision point. They can no longer schedule Eala like a standard mid-ranked player. Putting her on an outer court is not just an oversight anymore. It is a documented, proven safety risk. Going forward, her matches must be treated as premium show court events regardless of her precise ranking on any given week and regardless of who she is playing. The player's safety, the fans' safety, and the integrity of the tournament grounds all depend on it. That means guaranteed security details, pre-planned crowd management infrastructure at her practice sessions, and a formal acceptance that the sports tradition of hushed silence is going to be replaced by something that sounds a lot more like a stadium final every time she steps up to serve. For Alex personally, the journey carries a weight that is both beautiful and immense. She has the kind of crowd support that players like Novak Djokovic and Daniil Medvedev have openly said they envy. An entire stadium willing you toward victory is a powerful thing. It carries you when your legs are empty and gives you a reason to keep fighting when you are 2 breaks down in a deciding set. But it also means there is never a quiet moment. A missed forehand is not just a lost point. It feels in that instant, like a disappointment to thousands of people who traveled across the world to watch you win. Her ability to focus on the yellow ball, to shut out the noise, the brand obligations, the security escorts, and the weight of national expectation will ultimately define the arc of her career. She is carrying a torch that has never burned this brightly in the history of Philippine tennis. We will be tracking every step of her clay court campaign closely as she pushes toward Roland Garros and the dream that feels, for the first time, genuinely within reach. What do you think? Does the WTA need a complete overhaul of how they handle security and scheduling for players who generate fan bases that outgrow their rankings? And how do you think a 20-year-old processes the weight of carrying an entire nation's hopes every time she walks onto a court? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read as many as I can, and the conversations that come out of these videos are always worth having. If this deep dive was worth your time, hit the like button. It genuinely helps push the video to more people. Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss our next breakdown. Thanks for being here. I will see you in the next one.